Welcome back to Lake Havasu City and coverage of the 2009 Quakey Sense IJSBA World Finals. 800 runabouts set to compete on the water next, as some of the top riders are getting instruction prior to their opening moto. But first, let's visit with Don Dawson, who's in Bender Alley. Don?
You know, every single year, one of the things that all the racers love to do is grab a bunch of stuff that they're going to need for racing next year. One of the things they're definitely going to need is good oil, like Synergen, one of our great sponsors for the 2009 Quakey Sense World Finals. Here's one suggestion I have for you, though. Don't try getting this stuff in your carry-on.
And thanks to Don Dawson, as we get set now for Moto number 1 for 800 runabout. Chokadet Moli from Thailand starting from the pole after winning the opening qualification heat. But right next to him to his outside, Dave, your 3-time world champion and your defending world champion in 800 runabout. That's Josef Alabdurazak, but it's Josef who's left in the spray of a pair of Thai riders, Dave. Moli to the inside, and then Supadet Tenzai on that Singha beer-sponsored entry from Thailand. So a pair of Thai riders setting the pace early on. But you know, last year, Dave, it was Alabdurazak who came all the way back from 3rd place to steal the World Championship away from Moli, who's leading early on in this race.
Well, it is early on. This is Moto number 1. This is where everybody's going to try and set the pace. Qualification, just getting that pick on the line out there. But, you know, we got a great perspective of how rough that start is just by seeing Yusef riding in that jet wash. But I'll tell you, it's the old style 800s, these Sea-Doos that are out there in front. Supadet Tenzai and Chokatet Moli are really starting to run away with this. But the newer style, sometimes when the water gets a little bit rougher, it has an advantage out there. They're 800 cc's, same exact motor. They all have that rave valve in there, which is a valve as the RPMs go up and the exhaust gases will actually slide up and give it a little bit more power. So it really helps. So not much difference in the motor, but the holes, very different riding styles too.
And we have a host of world champions in this race, Dave. Not only has Moli won a world championship in the past, but the outlaw, Eric Lagopoulos, Sarasota, Florida, who looks to be in 2nd place, Dave, early on in this opening moto, a former world champion. And of course, Josef Alabdurazak, a 3-time world champion in this class. And Dave, early on, looking much like the qualification heat in which these riders ran for lane choice. It was Moli winning that opening qualification heat. The outlaw Lagopoulos was 2nd, with Josef Alabdurazak in 3rd. So identical racing order here in this opening moto. But Dave, talk about Josef Alabdurazak racing with a pair of slip discs in his back. His trainer for Kuwait has said that he shouldn't be out there competing, but he's really grinning and bearing it. He's out here competing, trying to defend his world championship.
Well, you know, it's going to be a definite difficulty for him out there. I mean, he's got to be in a lot of pain. We know he's got to be clear-headed out there, so we know he's not on anything. You know, he's one of the nicest guys, but he is also a fierce competitor, and it shows right now. You know, he's really trying. Now, seeing him scanned a little bit right there, he's stretching his back out. You can see it's starting to bother him. We're not even 2 laps into this.
And that's the one thing you notice that Josef is doing, especially early on here, as we focus in on that Zane-sponsored entry, not sitting in the saddle as much as the riders up front, just trying not to get as much jarring as, say, Moli up front, your former world champion from Thailand, or Lagopoulos. But talk about how that's going to affect his riding style, because you figure now his arms are going to be absorbing more of that shock on the race course, and that might tire him down, as the riders call it, more arm pump. But now you see Moli rising out of the saddle. But talk about having to sit out of the seat the entire race.
Well, you know, sitting out of the seat is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. You want your legs to be the shock absorbers. You're sitting on that seat, even though the newer style, which they don't manufacture anymore, it's got a shock or suspension on it, so it actually absorbs a little bit. But I'll tell you, if you got back problems, it starts slamming you. A weight comes up, hits you off pace, it's going to throw your whole game off. He's got a lot on his back right now going into this, a lot of pressure, a lot of pain. He's grinning and bearing. He's going to do the best. But you know what? Scanning for him might actually help a little bit.
So it's Moli, that T4 up front, representing Thailand. He's a world champion in the past, and that Zane-sponsored entry, Alabdurazak able to get past the outlaw, Eric Lagopoulos, through the splits 1 lap ago. So this race was looking eerily familiar to the race last year, in which Moli and the outlaw Lagopoulos were working through the outside split. Josef Alabdurazak saw that those two were staying to the outside, dove to the inside, was able to make a pass, getting past both the 1 and 2 riders, and get to the lead and win the world championship. And he does the same here to Moli. So Alabdurazak, finding that the inside split is working to his advantage, able to get past the outlaw Lagopoulos 1 lap ago, and now able to get past Moli for the lead. So it shows you that the inside split a little bit quicker right now than the outside split, Dave.
Well, also when that inside split gets a little rougher, I think the whole advantage is paying off for Yusef right now. that hole tends to knife through it. It's a little bit quicker through the rough water. We're going to call these things like little go-karts in the water. They handle extremely well. They're very nimble. But I'll tell you, when the water gets a little rough, they start chopping out of the water. And if you hop out of the water, the pump's not in there, you're not going to get that form of momentum. With the newer design, it's more of a deeper V, we're going to call it, so it cuts through a little bit better, and it does stay, hooked up.
And talk about the frustration that Molee has to be feeling. Dave, in the years past, last year, he was well on his way to winning a world championship in 800. He had that taken away from him from Olive Durazak and a late pass in the 800 second moto. And here, he gets lane choice, wins the opening qualification heat. Things are looking great for him as we watch this battle along the back stretch. So the Outlaw Lagopoulos quickly going backwards on the race course as he moves back now to 4th place. So the Outlaw had been running 2nd, now has dropped to 4th. Josef Olive Durazak, and it doesn't look like his back is bothering him. Just tried to get as loose as possible, but Dave, it's going to be so tough for him to stay loose going into that second moto.
And I can't even say how being loose is really good for watercraft. We like to say you got to go Gumby out there. You got to become one with the water, let your body, you can't fight it. You got to be able to steer it. You're going to muscle it around a little bit, but you got to be very fluid. You got to be flexible. And when you've got some back problems and your back starts tightening up, that is like your core. That is the main part of your body that absorbs the shock and where your strength comes from. So he has really come into a disadvantage. But him being in tip-top shape has really helped him with this injury, and also with that regimen of stretching and getting ready massage. Hey, it's got to help.
Well, the checkered flag is out. Josef Olive Durazak, that Zane-sponsored entry, prepared by Kenny Sims from Dallas, Texas, takes the opening moto win. So your defending world champion in 800 Runabout starts off his campaign here with an opening moto win, and that marks very well for the Kuwaiti rider.
Hopefully everything looked good today. I had one Moto 1 now, so I have to be consistent in Moto 2. I have to see who got 2nd and 3rd, and calculate this in my head and see if I get the world champion again.